Give me 6 hours to chop a wood, and I will spend the first 4 hours sharpening my axe. Statement from Abraham Lincoln, who talked about 5 hidden strategies on how to study really fast and understand in such a way that you feel that it's illegal. And the first strategy is sharpen the axe. I remember when I was preparing for my exams in order to get into residency, it was pretty tough. It was not easy. I had to juggle between having a full-time job, taking care of the family, studying, and then trying to live a life. Trying not to go crazy or get depressed or so stressed. I took a majority of my time just to think about how to study. I read lots of other stuff that had nothing to do with medicine, but the time was ticking and I just needed to figure out how to do it when I start. Because like online, when I hear a lot of people saying, oh, I read 2 or 3 times, I'm like, okay, good for you. But I took a lot of time just trying to understand myself, learning how to learn. Before you begin studying to say get into medical school, which is very competitive, you have to do your MCATs, or as an IMG, before you study to match into residency, you have QE1, you have NACOSKI, and you have all these other exams and tests that you have to take in order to meet the minimum eligibility to be able to apply for a program. The first thing you want to do is take some time, think about yourself, think about what works for you, learn how to learn, organize your materials, set your objectives, make sure they are structured and that you can understand them very easily. Understand the high yield material. If you can understand the high yield materials, for sure you'll be able to ace and have more than 80% correct the most times. Research has shown that planning your lesson, your learning objectives increases your retention capacity by up to around 80 to 90%. This is huge. So instead of reading a whole topic, say in Harrison's on COPD, take some time and ask yourself, what is the material that's usually tested on PD, on the exams? What is essential? What is commonly seen in clinical practice on COPD? Then you focus on that material, and as you get used to that material and get to the core, you'll be able to ace every other material. Number 2, active recall. Don't just read, retrieve. Instead of passively just reading a chapter for the sake of reading and then say I read it 1-2 times, it is best to quiz yourself on that particular topic. If you've read about acid bases today, quiz yourself on it. Just try as much as possible to force yourself to respond to scenarios and clinical questions about that particular topic that you read about. That is the best way to make sure that information is sticking in your brain. So this technique of quizzing yourself will strengthen your neural connections and improve your long-term retention. There was a study that was done in 2006 by Rediger and Kapkek, and what they were able to prove from that study was that students who use active recall remembered about 80% of the course material, as opposed to those who just reread the material again for a second time. So rereading for a second time is not always the best choice. Of course, sometimes you have to reread a second time to master it very well, but quizzing yourself is usually the best way to go forward after doing a first reading. And so I see a lot of people saying, no, I can't start answering questions in Turner or UWorld because I haven't read enough. No, that is wrong. Go straight. Actually, I didn't read. I just started answering questions. And from the questions, I knew exactly what to go and read. I wasn't worried about having a 2 over 40 in the block, but all those questions pointed me in the right direction. I began to develop patterns and saw the kind of questions that are being asked in the exams, and that is how I was able to focus and read just on the high yield topic, able to then score really well on the board exams that I took. So please, active recall is the best way. Force yourself to try to remember the things that you've read, and doing a second reading is not always necessary, but sometimes you gotta do it. After reviewing a topic like heart failure, close your book, try to write down everything that you remember, try to tell it to somebody, try to answer questions on heart failure. Don't say I need to go read it again. Use flashcards like Anki's to stimulate your recall. Again, this is what Daniel Washington said, that memory is the residue of thought. You can't keep something if you don't think about it. Number 3 thing is spaced repetition. Don't cram it, schedule it. And this is a method I actually use, and I found it really interesting, but a lot of people don't use this particular method. And it's a very interesting method of studying. So how does it work? Study your material over increasing intervals of time. Let's say I read a topic today on diabetes ketoacidosis. I'm done with it today, and then I go back to that topic for a quick quick review after 3 days, then again after a week, then after a month. When I do this spaced repetition, it forces my brain and the meninges and the hippocampus to store this information, and I found this very, very important. If you used to make little notes or highlight certain points in your book, just do that, then come back. So when you've read the topic the first time, come back to it after 3 days, then after a week, then after a month. You find out that after a month or two, you have a very solid mastery of that particular topic. So this is spaced repetition. This is a technique that has been shown to be very useful. And if you look at this, the Ebbinghaus forgetting curve depicts that spaced studying increases your retention capacity by a lot. People use flashcards, some people use Anki's, some people are just good at highlighting. I don't use any of those. I just try to read and highlight. I started teaching myself at a particular point in time to read without writing because I wanted everything to get stuck on my brain. That is pretty dangerous. The harder things are and you're able to do them, the more learning you do and the more you force your brain to retain them and keep it, because you know that, oh, I don't have any material that I'm going to rely on next time that I can readily get answers from. So Mr. Brain, please make sure you put everything in there because I would only rely on you. It's tricky, it's very hard from the very beginning, but you get to retain and you get used to this kind of way of studying. So repetition is a mother of learning, but only if spaced wisely. Number 4, interleaving. Mix subjects, don't block them. What do I mean by this? Study different materials. Don't just take one topic. When you interchange topics that way, you force your brain to develop a more robust neural network and connect different points on the different topics that you've read. And you are not blocked in a sense that you try to make a link between the different topics that you're reading. If you're just focusing on reading that one particular topic, it becomes very difficult once you're taking out of it. And you can read everything, and by the time you're reading your chapter 70, for sure you've forgotten chapter 1. So study different topics in alternating sessions rather than, blocking one subject at a time. And this enhances your ability to differentiate and apply concepts in a flexible manner. And so Bijak in 2008 showed that interleave practice improve connectivity and problem solving ability and transfer of knowledge. So this is really important. Example, if you start studying, let's say, antibiotics today, then try to study about different kinds of antibiotics, then leave it, go study neurology, then leave it, go study nephrology, and then come back to antibiotics again another time. That is just how you should do. Instead of blocking one topic and say, I'm going to study infectious disease from Monday to Thursday, you're just infectious. That's not very productive for you. You should create interleaving by spacing on the subject. Point number 5, teach it. If you can teach it, then you know it. Again, if you study and you cannot teach it, then you don't know it, because that is when your brain is forced to structure the information that you have gathered and to be able to synthesize it, to put in a simpler format that every other person listening to you can understand and assimilate. And this is a great deal of a job to do. And if you're able to teach it, it means you've understood it. Explaining a concept to someone else forces you to simplify, structure, and fully understand it. This technique of explaining to someone is known as the Feynman technique. Studies have shown that once you explain something to over, your understanding of the entire concept improves by up to 90%. That is huge. And so teach the mechanism of action of aspirin in terms of preventing heart issues. If you're able to explain this in a molecular way or know why that happens and explain it to someone, then you're actually on the right path. And so if you can't explain it simply, then you don't understand it well enough. So there you go. We've talked about 5 different things, and the first one was learn how to learn or sharpen your axe. Second one was active recall. Third point that we talked about today was spaced repetition. The fourth point that we talked about today, interleaving. And the fifth point was teaching others. So hi, if you've liked this video and it's interesting to you and you want to learn more, please hit subscribe, and we'll see you in the next one.